I love Indiana Jones. It should come as no shock. I've done quite a lot of videos on the toys, the movies, the theme park ride. But getting toys for Indiana Jones means that kids have to like the property. And while it does have some appeal to kids, past experience has shown that, well, Indiana Jones is more of a sad panda when it comes to toy lines because they tend to only sell in a movie year. And this has been true for the brand's history. While there have been some odds and ends like the Disney park exclusives, for the most part, mass retail Indiana Jones toys are 100% dependent on a theatrical release. If there's a movie in the theaters, unless it's Last Crusade, we tend to get toys, even with the current movie Dial of Destiny. So, looking at the history of Indiana Jones toys for all the movies, again, except for Last Crusade, which had no toy line, between figures and play sets, let's look at some of the stuff that never made it because, well, toy companies were expecting the line to be evergreen or at least be more than 1 year. But unfortunately, Indiana Jones tends to always get cut off in 1 year. So, with the ambition of toy companies, let's take a look at the SKUs that were designed for year 2. Now, the original line, the one that came out for Raiders, did have plans for more figures beyond the initial releases. And this has led to a lot of fan customs, like that Captain Katanga there, just a fan creation. But Kenner, did I say Hasbro before? Kenner back in the day had created deluxe sets for the Ravenwood Bar as well as the opening temple scene that were going to include multiple figures, accessories, in order to create key moments. Unfortunately, never made it to market. Another line that was looked at by Kenner was a metals line. So you might say metal figures, that doesn't seem like something from, the 80s. Metal figures are new, right? That's something Jada does. Well, I actually have a very special connection to this because I actually created the Jada nano metal figures. I was the brand VP at the company and had suggested we go smaller with the figures. I actually used my old Star Wars figures from this set. I walked into Jada and said, why don't we do this? So that's a whole other video, the origin of the nano figures. But the point is, Kenner was making these things back in the 80s, these micro collection sets for Star Wars. And that's exactly what they had planned for Indiana Jones. Essentially, if a line works for one IP, why not just take it and try it out on another? This was something that was done actually years later by Galoob, who also looked at doing mini play sets that would work for vehicles and minifigs. And there were concepts and developed play sets as well for their Micro Machine line, which again, unfortunately, the playsets never made it to market, but they did put out a few sets of vehicles as well as some mini slug figures of Indy and as well as, in the minecart there with Willie and Short Round. So once again, small miniature, this time plastic, not metal like the original one, never made it to market. LJN picked up the license for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and we got a thuggy guard, Mola Ram, and Indy in his full jacket, even though in Temple of Doom he tends to be shirtless, or rather sleeveless, in a torn shirt. That tends to be his iconic look, but he did wear his jacket for a while. This line had multiple figures that were designed for it that never made it to market, and they actually, pretty easy search online will show these because they were in the catalog. So Willie and Short Round were both designed, sculpted, and painted for this line to complement it out to 5 figures instead of just 3. But due to the dark nature of the film and, to say these never got actually tooled, just sculpted and designed. So you're looking at what are the first test shots there, not the actual tooling. And these are what are called the paint masters. So this is all done before tooling is invested in. And basically, if you haven't invested in the tooling, you're not going to get the figure. That's why we see prototypes in catalogs all the time, like the Motu Hero figure in '87 or the the Robin Hood Wave 2. All right, so looking at the back of the card, you also saw Willie and Short Round shown. So it wasn't just in the catalog, again, like Robin Hood Prince of Thieves or Hero or the Mad Bubbler from Thundercats. Lots of toys show up in the catalogs. But unfortunately, we never get them because there's not demand, and toy companies can only ship product to retailers when retailers ask for it. So Willie, Short Round, and there was actually a second Indy. So you'll see if you have a copy of the '84 LJN dealer catalog. Yes, I understand most people don't have that at home. But in addition to the additional figures, there was going to be a minecart game, which actually also kind of worked as a playset. And you could probably just use that as a playset since it worked with the figurines, or figures. So yeah, it was basically two loop-de-loops, kind of like a Hot Wheels track set, but instead of a Ferrari or a race car, you have a minecart, which makes sense because this is probably one of the most iconic scenes in the movie. They even created the box art that would have gone with this Temple of Doom board game, including the minecart racetrack, which again, I think if this had come out, I would have just used it as an action figure accessory as opposed to playing the board game. But, that's just me. I'm not saying I'm against board games. I love Monopoly. I mentioned earlier that there was another figure that was sculpted besides Short Round and Willie, and that was this second Indiana Jones that would have been exclusive with the minecart. So just a different face sculpt and slightly different hair, but same basic figure, use the same body. But this way they could refresh it and make it slightly different because, just different enough is good. Fast forwarding to Hasbro taking over the line with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like I said, we skipped over Last Crusade, the only one to not have toys. But we did get Last Crusade figures with Hasbro, as well as all of the Indiana Jones movies were represented, at least all of the ones to date, Dial of Destiny being several years away from being a possibility. Now, the final wave of figures was planned for 2010, but as I said, it only made it through 1 year, and before being canceled because of lack of retailer demand. But you can see a lot of work was done for year 2. Not only this wave, but there were additional Raiders characters that were sculpted and brought almost to tooling. These are first shots, so this is before tooling is done. Captain Katanga with a removable hat, so you could, I guess, see his weird hairline going around his head, as well as this guy who drives the truck in Raiders, the one Indy climbs under. So he was known as, I think, like Angry German, or no, Tough Sergeant, that's what it was. Tough Sergeant was his official name. So this figure has shown up as well on eBay and different spots as a pre-tooled figure. There were some vehicles as well. There's going to be a refresh of young Indiana Jones with his Boy Scout hat, as well as a minecart and a sidecar for the existing Indiana Jones motorcycle that came with the German Guard. Now, unlike Star Wars, Indiana Jones does not have an infinite amount of characters. They tend to be focused on, Indy. But there is more content that Kenner Hasbro looked at mining at different points, specifically some of the comic books that Marvel put out in the 1980s, which are a really good read, by the way. Now, at this time, Hasbro was already putting out comic book packs for Star Wars, and there's a big thing in the toy industry: if it works for one brand, do it in another, copy and paste, and that's exactly what Hasbro did. And it was a great way to refresh Indy in different colors, different looks, slightly different outfits, because they could mine the comic books and all of the different looks that Indy had, whether he had a scarf over his face or he was wearing robes of a different color. It was a great way to keep the main character out there, since the movies had limited refresh possibilities, if you will. Now, they mined both the comic books, things like Sea Butchers, as well as the Dark Horse comics, Thunder in the Orient, so both Marvel comics, Dark Horse comics, and even some of the PC games, like the Final Nail. So it's crazy how deep they went. I'm sorry, not the Final Nail, Fourth Nail, excuse me. So yeah, and that last wave I mentioned that was fully tooled, not just brought up to Paint Masters and First Shots, because the tooling was invested, it was released as a Comic-Con pack with all the figures in the wave in one set. The final product that Hasbro worked on at the time of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a Club Obi-Wan wave. Now, unfortunately, there aren't photos of this, but I was able to reach out to some buddies of mine at Hasbro who basically said, yep, they went all the way to Paint Masters and looked beautiful. It was a whole wave of Club Obi-Wan characters. Now, these images, these concept are just Tommy Lynn, who's a customizer. We finally did get a Indiana Jones Club Obi-Wan figure in the Dial of Destiny line, which, again, was cool. It was a Target exclusive, but we never got anyone else. We never got Lao She or any of his goons or Willie. Hasbro had planned on a full wave of Club Obi-Wan figures, which would have included all of these. Indiana Jones in his James Bond-inspired tuxedo. Yes, go Google it. as well as Lao She and his sons and his, are they goons? Thugs? I'd have to look it up. But it would have been cool. This is one of my favorite scenes in the entire Indiana Jones franchise, and we've gotten so few toys from it. So it would have been cool. Hey, at least there's a customizer out there who's more talented than I am. It's just too bad Hasbro couldn't do this. Now, with the final line out there, the Adventure series in 6-inch that we're getting with the current movie, time to tell, what actually never got made. One concept that actually has slipped out is that Hasbro, in addition to the medallion from Raiders as a prop replica, we're working on a Last Crusade Holy Grail prop replica. This was brought again all the way to the first shots phase, but because Dial of Destiny underperformed, it was canceled. So alas, no Holy Grail for all of us. I hope you enjoyed this look at some lost Indiana Jones toys, and with a new movie that also bombed in 2023, we'll probably see some 6-inch prototypes kind of showing up on eBay, and I would keep an eye out for that in the coming year. I'm excited to see what could have been. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and I'll see you in the next video.